This is the first time that I'm speaking about it. It's something that I'll never forget, actually.
A former assistant to Sean Diddy Combs speaking out in a new interview with new allegations about wild parties and drug use.
It's no secret that the glamorous world of music and entertainment often hides a darker, more twisted reality behind the scenes. And one man who's been dominating headlines for all the wrong reasons lately is none other than Sean Diddy Combs. But what if the public's perception of this music mogul, who's built an empire on charm, talent, and charisma, was shattered by explosive allegations that paint him as someone entirely different? Today, we're diving into one of the most shocking claims yet, a former employee's disturbing account of the lengths Diddy allegedly forced people to go to in order to stay in his good graces.
This is somebody that actually thought that he was above the law. So I can only, think that, he was sloppy in the way that he did these crimes, that there's probably a trail of evidence, not only involving him, but everybody in his circle that he would, delegate these responsibilities to.
Imagine this. A young, ambitious professional lands a dream job working for one of the biggest names in the music industry. He's surrounded by fame, fortune, and the promise of success. That's exactly what Philip Pines thought he was getting when he became Diddy's personal assistant back in 2019. But what he signed up for and what he ended up enduring were two entirely different realities, ones that would leave him emotionally scarred and questioning everything he thought he knew about the man he once admired.
He was responsible for Diddy's day-to-day life, so he is able to provide a lot of information about what that life was like. He goes into detail on extensive use.
Philip, who worked closely with Diddy from 2019 to 2021, initially saw the opportunity as his big break. This was the man behind Bad Boy Records, the architect of some of the greatest hits in hip-hop history, and a cultural icon who seemed to have it all. But according to Philip, working for Diddy came with a price, one that went far beyond the long hours and grueling expectations often associated with the entertainment industry. From the start, Philip noticed that loyalty wasn't just valued in Diddy's world, it was demanded. And the way he allegedly tested that loyalty was nothing short of horrifying. Philip's story begins innocently enough. He was hired to assist Diddy with the day-to-day tasks of maintaining his multi-million-dollar empire. Picking up dry cleaning coordinating schedules and running errands were typical parts of the job. But as time went on, Philip claims he was pulled deeper into what he describes as a toxic and abusive environment, where the lines between professional duties and personal boundaries became increasingly blurred. He says it wasn't long before he realized that working for Diddy wasn't just a job. It was a test of how far someone was willing to go to prove their devotion.
Good morning, Michael. At this point, we've all probably heard about these infamous parties. Diddy's assistant now giving us details about what he says were called Wild King Nights.
In an emotional interview for a recent documentary series, Philip fought back tears as he recounted one of the most traumatic experiences of his life. He claims that one night, while Diddy was hosting one of his infamous private gatherings, he was summoned upstairs for what he thought was another routine task. But what awaited him was anything but ordinary. According to Philip, Diddy, who had been drinking heavily throughout the night, looked him in the eye and told him he needed to prove his loyalty if he wanted to stay in his inner circle. The alleged demand? To engage in an intimate act with a guest at the party while Diddy watched?
A lot of times you would have him with a younger female, and there's a power dynamic there. A more impressionable girl is easier to reel in. Consent is between the people that are engaging, and I wasn't there in these situations to understand the consent.
Philip says he was completely caught off guard. He froze, unable to process what was happening. This wasn't a request. It was an order delivered with the kind of authority that made it clear there would be consequences if he refused. Diddy allegedly handed him a small item, patted him on the shoulder like a coach about to send a player into a game, and pushed him toward the waiting guest. Philip described feeling trapped, terrified of what might happen if he didn't comply. According to him, it wasn't just the fear of losing his job. It was the fear of Diddy's wrath, which he claims he had witnessed firsthand on multiple occasions.
In the moment, it just felt like, what? Like, is this fun for him? Is this like a test?
What makes Philip's story even more chilling is the context he provides about the atmosphere surrounding Diddy at the time. He alleges that everyone in Diddy's orbit knew how far he was willing to go to maintain control over those around him. Philip claims he had seen employees reduced to tears, verbally berated, and even physically intimidated for the smallest perceived infractions. He says Diddy's temper was unpredictable, and the power dynamics in the household made it clear that no one was safe from his outbursts. It was this environment of fear and manipulation that Philip says kept him from standing up for himself that night.
Wait a minute. Say that again. Say that again. Back up. You're saying that there's tapes and they're being shopped?
Yes, there have been people already shopping.
We've heard about the tapes, but
Yes.
the shopping thing is
Yes,
new.
there already have been tapes leaking around Hollywood, being shopped around to individuals in Hollywood. But one particular person contacted me to shop a particular video they were in possession of.
As Philip reluctantly went through with the act, he says his mind raced with questions. Was this a test? Was this a test? Was it for Diddy's entertainment? Did he even realize the damage he was causing? The experience left Philip feeling humiliated and powerless, and he says it marked a turning point in his relationship with Diddy. From that moment on, he claims he viewed his boss not as a mentor or a role model, but as a predator who thrived on exploiting the vulnerabilities of those around him.
It sounds like there was probably a lot of hidden cameras as well. Is that what is being talked about?
Yes, this was actually in his Atlanta home, at a home he had in Atlanta at one point. And it does seem that the person isn't like looking into the video, so it's, to me, doesn't seem like that person knows they're being videotaped. It doesn't seem like they're active participant in the videotaping.
In the days and weeks that followed, Philip says he struggled to come to terms with what had happened. He claims he buried his feelings and threw himself into his work, convincing himself that this was just part of the job. But the guilt and shame lingered, eating away at him until he could no longer ignore the toll it was taking on his mental health. Eventually, Philip decided to leave his position, walking away from what he once thought was his dream job. But even after putting distance between himself and Diddy, he says the emotional scars remained. Philip's decision to speak out wasn't an easy one. He says he wrestled with the fear of retaliation and the stigma of coming forward as a man who had been victimized. But in the end, he felt it was his responsibility to shed light on the darker side of the entertainment industry, a world where power and influence can often shield those who abuse it from accountability. His story has since become a central focus of the legal battles currently surrounding Diddy as more and more people step forward with their own allegations against the music mogul.
Did Phil explain why he's speaking out now?
He said he's speaking out because he believes Diddy's a predator. He wants accountability, and he doesn't want someone like this to run unchecked in the future.
What's particularly striking about Philip's account is how it mirrors other stories that have come to light in recent months. From the allegations of coercion and abuse to the controlling behavior described by multiple accusers, a pattern seems to be emerging, one that paints a picture of a man who used his position of power to manipulate and intimidate those around him. And while Diddy has vehemently denied all allegations, claiming they are part of a coordinated effort to tarnish his reputation, the sheer volume of accusations has raised questions about the culture of silence that allowed such behavior to persist for so long.
If they did in fact occur, their argument is more than likely going to be that this activity was consensual, that this person was a willing participant, and not only that, but that these individuals assumed the risk of being present at those parties, of engaging and voluntarily engaging in this conduct and being in those spaces, consuming and things of that nature.
Philip's story also highlights the broader issue of abuse within the music industry, where the pressure to succeed can often make individuals vulnerable to exploitation. His experience serves as a reminder of the importance of holding powerful figures accountable, regardless of their status or influence. And as more details continue to emerge, it's clear that the fallout from these allegations will have far-reaching implications, not just for Diddy, but for the industry as a whole. As we transition into the next chapter of this unfolding saga, the question remains, how deep does the rabbit hole go? With new lawsuits and testimonies surfacing almost weekly, the allegations against Diddy have become a lightning rod for discussions about power, privilege, and accountability in the entertainment world. But one thing is certain, this story is far from over.
You know, it's still pretty early in the proceedings. I think it's only been about a month or a month and a half since he's been arraigned and held in detention. And so the investigations are always going to be a continuous and ongoing process. I'm sure at this point there's been an exchange of discovery. And not only that, but I think there's been a gag order placed on the attorneys with information that they can and cannot share. But more importantly,
the allegations against Sean Diddy Combs have exploded into a web of disturbing claims. And what started as isolated incidents now appears to be part of a much larger pattern. Philip Hine's shocking account, as heartbreaking as it is far from the only story painting a grim picture of what life was like for those in Diddy's orbit. As more lawsuits and testimonies come pouring in, it's impossible to ignore the eerie similarities between these claims, suggesting that Diddy's alleged behavior was not only deliberate but systematic. The connections between these accounts are unnerving, and they reveal a culture of control, fear, and manipulation that seems to have permeated every corner of his empire.
A woman is accusing Sean Diddy Combs of drugging and raping her when she was 16 years old in 2000.
For years, Diddy has been a symbol of success, a man who seemed untouchable with his empire-spanning music, fashion, and business. But if the allegations are to be believed, behind the glamorous facade lay a darker reality. One where power was wielded like a weapon. Philip Pine's story may have opened the floodgates, but others have stepped forward with their own chilling testimonies, many echoing the same themes of coercion, intimidation, and boundary-crossing demands. This begs the question, was this an isolated case of one man abusing his power, or is there a deeper, more sinister operation at play? Let's step back for a moment and take a closer look at the bigger picture. Over the past few months, Diddy has been hit with multiple lawsuits, each one more shocking than the last. Both these lawsuits span a wide range of accusations, from emotional manipulation to outright physical harm, and the details are as jaw-dropping as they are disturbing. One of the most publicized allegations came from his former partner, Cassie Ventura, who filed a lawsuit against him in November 2023. Cassie described her relationship with Diddy as a nightmare, filled with constant surveillance, threats, and actions designed to strip her of her autonomy. The lawsuit painted Diddy as a controlling figure who allegedly monitored her every move and coerced her into situations she felt powerless to escape.
That fact in of itself is a big deal, because when you're talking about going back in time and talking about these allegations from other alleged victims, you know, there's not a lot of police reports, but you guys actually have one. And is that going to be revealed? Are we going to be able to see it?
Yes, as soon as I file my lawsuit in civil court, I will be attaching the...
What's even more alarming is how Cassie's claims align with those of other accusers, including Philip Pine's. Both describe an environment where loyalty was prized above all else and where proving that loyalty often came at a personal cost. Cassie even alleged that Diddy once threatened to harm another artist, Kid Cudi, simply because she had shown an interest in him. According to her, Diddy went as far as claiming he would destroy Kid Cudi's property as a show of dominance. These accusations reveal a troubling pattern, one where Diddy allegedly used intimidation and fear to maintain control over those around him. But Cassie isn't the only one who has spoken out. Another accuser, identified only as Jane Doe, filed a lawsuit claiming that she was forced into situations that left her deeply traumatized. Her testimony adds yet another layer to the growing narrative of control and exploitation. She described being drawn into Diddy's world under the guise of opportunity, only to find herself in situations where her autonomy was stripped away. Like Philip and Cassie, Jane Doe's story underscores a recurring theme. Diddy allegedly created an environment where people felt they had no choice but to comply with his demands, no matter how uncomfortable or degrading those demands might have been.
He is very, very dominant. Like, he wants to control the situation. He wants to control his inner circle. He wants to make everyone have a good time and enjoy his parties. And so, you know, it is scary, because you think, you know, this person or possibly his social network or the people he's around could make or break your career.
And then there's Nathan, a man who came forward with his own set of allegations about what went on behind closed doors. Nathan described situations that were orchestrated down to the smallest detail, with every action seemingly choreographed to reinforce Diddy's control. He recalled being drawn into situations where he felt like a mere pawn in Diddy's elaborate games, manipulated into participating in activities that left him feeling both used and powerless. Nathan's testimony adds yet another perspective to the growing list of accusations, showing that Diddy's alleged behavior wasn't limited to one type of victim or one type of situation. Instead, it seems to have been a pervasive part of his interactions with those in his inner circle.
You know, if you say the wrong thing or you complain or you know, I don't know, there's an element where you're just, I guess manipulated in a way to make you feel like, oh, you have to please everyone around you. You can't say anything wrong. You don't want to say a bad thing. Or, you know, when they're constantly asking you, would you like to do drugs? And you're like, well, I don't do drugs. And they're like, well, why don't you do drugs? And so, like, it's...
What's particularly striking about these accounts is how they all point to a deliberate and calculated pattern of behavior. These aren't random, isolated incidents. They're part of a larger narrative that suggests Diddy allegedly created an environment where power dynamics were skewed heavily in his favor. Whether it's Philip being forced into a humiliating situation to prove his loyalty, Cassie feeling trapped in a toxic relationship, or Nathan describing meticulously orchestrated scenarios, the common thread is control. Diddy's alleged actions appear to have been designed to strip people of their agency, leaving them feeling vulnerable and unable to push back.
I don't know the consequences of what that could have been. So I didn't really talk about it. I should have gone to the police. I should have said something other than to my agent. I'm just thankful that there was somebody there. There was somebody at that party who helped me, because I could have ended up in a really bad situation.
Of course, Diddy has denied all allegations against him, with his legal team arguing that these claims are baseless and motivated by financial gain. In response to Cassie's lawsuit, his lawyers issued a statement calling her allegations outrageous lies and claiming that they were part of a coordinated effort to damage his reputation. Similarly, in the case of Jane Doe, Diddy's team argued that her accusations were an attempt to exploit his wealth and status. But the sheer number of allegations and the striking similarities between them make it difficult to dismiss these claims as mere opportunism.
Because he was using, allegedly, these events to invite them back to these private mansion parties and hotel parties and God knows what else. But he was utilizing the branded events to be able to, get the girls to come over to his private spaces.
The legal battles surrounding Diddy have also brought to light the lengths to which he and his team allegedly went to keep these stories from coming out. Multiple accusers have claimed that they were offered financial incentives to stay silent, with some even alleging that they were threatened or intimidated into dropping their claims. These allegations suggest that the culture of control extended beyond Diddy's personal relationships and into his professional dealings, creating an environment where people felt they had no choice but to comply. One particularly chilling example of this came to light during Philip Pine's interview. He described a moment when he considered speaking out about what he had experienced, only to be reminded of the consequences. He claimed that Diddy had a way of making it clear that anyone who crossed him would face repercussions, whether through legal action, public humiliation, or worse. This fear of retaliation is a recurring theme in many of the allegations against Diddy, with accusers describing a sense of helplessness that kept them from coming forward sooner.
I'm not surprised with the decision. I'm surprised that Judge Subramanian entertained it. He held a 2-hour hearing, which we were covering live, and he issued a 5-page written order. Most other judges, including the 2 previous judges, to consider this issue, summarily denied the bail motion. I think a lot of it stems from Judge Subramanian being a newer judge. This is a Biden appointee.
As these lawsuits continue to unfold, more and more people are coming forward with their own stories, adding to the growing body of evidence against Diddy. From former employees to ex-partners, the accounts paint a picture of a man who allegedly thrived on control and manipulation, using his power and influence to silence those who dared to challenge him. And while Diddy's legal team has been quick to dismiss these claims, the court of public opinion is beginning to turn against him.
I agree. And the risk of flight was always going to be a tough argument for the government because obviously Combs voluntarily came to New York. He surrendered his passports through his lawyer. He could have fled after the March raids of his Miami and Los Angeles homes, but he didn't. He has access to 2 private jets. I think it was a tougher argument. I know the government made the argument, but clearly the best argument was the dangerousness and the witness tampering.
The impact of these allegations is already being felt across Diddy's empire. Brands and business partners have started distancing themselves from him, and his once glittering reputation has taken a significant hit. But perhaps the most significant consequence is the cultural shift these allegations have sparked. By coming forward, Philip Pines, Cassie, Nathan, and others have exposed the darker side of an industry that often allows powerful figures to operate with impunity. Their stories serve as a reminder that no one is above accountability, no matter how successful or influential they may be. As the legal battles continue, one thing is clear. This is just the beginning. The allegations against Diddy have opened the door to a much larger conversation about power, privilege, and accountability in the entertainment industry. And while Diddy maintains his innocence, the growing number of voices speaking out against him suggests that this story is far from over.
What it shows, what the complaint is illustrating is this completely out of control party on a super yacht, including various celebrities, that when you read it, it kind of rings true. I mean, when you read it, it doesn't come off as being something that's...
The question now is not just whether Diddy will face consequences for his alleged actions, but what this means for an industry that has long been plagued by similar scandals. Will this be the moment when the music world finally confronts its darker realities, or will it be just another chapter in a long history of silence and complicity? The comment section is open, and the floor is yours. Share your thoughts, theories, and insights. Until the next bombshell drops, stay curious and keep the conversation going. Goodbye for now.